The topic under discussion, sports marketing. And joining us now, Chief Marketing Officer of MTN South Africa, Serame Takobong. Head of Sponsorship at South African Breweries Limited, Rob Fleming. And of course, still with us, Sandile Nzikeli from EXP Agency. Welcome, gentlemen. So let's start with you, Serame. I mean, the FIFA World Cup, what can we say? It was probably the epitome of sponsorship in South Africa at the time. We spoke to you just after the World Cup on the show. You're quite happy with the sponsorship and the return on investment. But looking back now, what have you learnt as MTN from sponsoring the Soccer World Cup?
Well, I think for us, the biggest learning was just not to focus on the sponsorship and the event itself, but to extend it beyond that. And I think the key learning for us is it's almost like use traditional sponsorship but as a fusion of greater reach. So typically football would talk to an all-male market, but the World Cup, because of the apparently 60 stars who came, and the fact that it's a world event, drew a far wider audience than we get. So it forced us to look beyond just the traditional way of leveraging football. So you had to look at, entertainment, music, etc., to combine it with that. So I think it helped us stretch our properties beyond just the traditional viewer, because there's more people who participate in football, not just going to the stadium, but also engaging with it in different ways.
Right, and a yoba is now a word, really?
Absolutely.
In everyone's vocabulary. So let's look, Rob. Castle has got a foot really into all three major properties, rugby, football and soccer. So how do you as a sponsor decide what to sponsor and at what level? Because there's different levels of sponsorship, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think one of the points I tried to make it work is that we're not a sports brand. Castle's positioned as an iconic South African brand, so we prefer to associate with the South African icons, such as the Proteas, the Springboks and Bafana Bafana. And so we're not a rugby sponsor, but we sponsor the Springboks, who happen to play rugby. And I think that's the difference. That's the difference.
Okay, but now, Sandile, we've got two brands, major brands, and both sponsor cricket. Castle sponsors the Test Series, and MTN now sponsors the One Day International. So, from a consumer point of view, do you think people are getting confused? Because there's so many different levels of sponsorships. If we look at cricket, who do we think of? What brand comes to mind?
Well, I think, every sporting code, or in most sporting codes, particularly the three big ones, there's properties within them. So you can't really look at them. You got to look at them in isolation because they talk to different markets. So if you look at cricket as an example, you've got the ODIs, you've got 2020, you've got IPL. It's different markets. So it really depends on who you're talking to. In terms of the consumer, no, I don't think the consumers get confused at all. From a brand perspective, ultimately your objectives remains the same. As Rob was saying, they're involved in the three major sports for the same objective. Although they're targeting different audiences, but from a brand perspective, the objective still remains the same. I don't want to speak on behalf of Rob, but South African Breweries is about nation building. It's about, hence he talks about the icons of the country and all of that. I mean, whoever forgets the ad with the guy in the castle. It's all about nation building.
And you've got all the heroes on your billboards.
Exactly.
The Aaron McQueeners and whatever. But Rob's here. So do you agree with what Sandile is saying, Rob?
No, absolutely. And I think what you've got to realize is that it doesn't matter whether you're associated with cricket or not, or with rugby or not. It's how you're using that platform to engage and communicate your message with your consumers.
And we were just talking about it before the break when to Happy from APSA, that it's not just about the exposure, isn't it?
Sure.
It's about leveraging off the event, Serame, and taking it so much further. And that just goes back to your point, which you made with the Soccer World Cup.
Yeah, because for us, if you look at the World Cup, telecoms company football doesn't quite fit naturally. You think maybe one of the traditional football sponsors would be more relevant for that. And there again, it's saying how do you use then that medium? So you use a sponsorship as a medium of communicating your message. And if you look at what the Yoba element tried to do was to actually gather that whole sentiment of saying it is South African, it is ours, let's make it positive. So it was just a convenient, slightly global, but convenient medium for us to drive our message. And I think that's the approach where you say, the days of sponsorship of just sticking a logo and seeking title rights and saying, that's it. People are looking for more than that. And that's what separates, I think, even though you might have a category of sport with 5 or 6 or different type sponsors, it's who gets their messaging right, that really breaks through the clutter.
Yeah. Sticking on the global front, Sarami, tell us about the Manchester United business deal that you've recently signed.
I think for us it was a good follow-up from the World Cup to say, you know, traditionally we went from the Africa Cup to the World Cup itself, and then saying, you know, with this thing of associating our brand with a globally strong partner. Now, I'm not necessarily a fan of Man United, I'll admit, but if you look at the Man United franchise and the fan base it has, it also allows us to talk to an audience that we traditionally don't talk to, that you don't capture perhaps in local football or you don't capture in cricket. And there's huge communities that sit outside the traditional South African sports that are die-hard fans of the English Premier League, and particularly Man United.
Are they South African or African followers?
South African and African.
Right.
So it talks global, because this deal for us is...
Because your penetration is well within Africa.
Absolutely, yeah. So this encompasses the whole Southern African region, where football, particularly of the Premier League, is quite huge. And for us to associate with a brand like Man United is unbelievable. So, I mean, the next time you'll see Rooney saying Ayoba. Now, you can't get bigger than that.
Sandile? No, I was just going to say, I mean, sponsorship has evolved from looking at things from a quantitative perspective to a qualitative perspective. I mean, product integration, the two gentlemen will tell you that it's critical, because ultimately it's about the brand and it's about the business. I mean, if you look at SAB as a brand, and MTN, as well as ABSA for that matter, they probably have 99.99% spontaneous awareness in the marketplace. So from a brand perspective, they don't need to do much more. Yes, you need to do something, because if you don't, then the equity drops. But that's where the business is critical. So I don't know how many beer cans Rob sold over the World Cup or how many starter packs Rob sold, but they'll both tell you that in the sponsorship mix, product integration is critical. Otherwise,
but that's a very good question. So the question to Rob is it about sales? Is it about the bottom line? Can you track, when you sponsor an event, a sports team, can you actually track sales? Is it that simple?
No, it's not that straightforward, because there are several variables involved. But I think it's about using that platform that consumers are passionate about. And when you're passionate about something, it means your filters are lifted. You're prepared to listen and you're prepared to engage. So you've got people who are prepared to listen to you, and then you can engage with them, and then you can communicate your brand message. But as far as beer sales are concerned, I mean, we had a spike of 4% over the World Cup, which is not insignificant.
Right.
Especially in winter.
Exactly, exactly.
And especially, Budweiser was the official.
You know, we were the sponsors of the 2003 Cricket World Cup, and you know, the volume that happens in the stadiums is close to negligible. You know, it's really, really small. I mean, one truckload on a Saturday afternoon does more than what you do in the entire duration of a World Cup. So it's not so much about the volume at the stadium.
Right. Another question for you then, Rob, is imminent regulations on alcohol advertising and what effect this will have on sponsorships going forward.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it was highlighted when the Minister of Health made a comment. I think it was in December, and then the papers ran with it. But you know, we've been faced with this for certainly the last, well, since I've been at SAB, which is some time now. And I think the heat has risen in this debate. But what we do as an industry, not SAB specifically, is that we self-regulate. And by that I mean we control the nature of our communication. So we're always encouraging consumers to drink in moderation. You know, we'll only use people over 25 in our advertising.
Right.
We'll never use sportsmen in sponsorship. So you won't see, if you look at the current cricket ad, you won't see Graham Smith drinking.
Having a beer, yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
He'll endorse the product, but not through actual consumption. And so those are the kind of steps that we take to self-regulate. And as a result, we try and be ahead of the government in terms of
being proactive.
We are being proactive. And so hopefully we aren't going to get, we won't have our right to advertise and sponsor pulled from us. You know, I was chatting to Danny Jordan about it, and he said, you know, you guys encourage moderate drinking, And anything in extreme is bad. If you take too many analgesics, or if you drive your car too fast, everything in extremes is bad. And obviously alcohol consumption in extreme is bad for you. So we certainly encourage moderation, and we hope that the government will see it that way.